Funnily enough, that's the title of my autobiography. Let's preserve this nonsense for posterity.
Great minds. So we do the couple times a week, we do a play date with Abby's pod, right? And at some point last month, Ruth was like, for my birthday, I'm going to take our play date and we're going to dress up as witches and we're going to go to a graveyard and do a photo shoot and it'll be super fun. And she told me the date and I was like, cool. And then that date arrived and I had no clue. So I was
I've certainly never done that in my life.
Yeah. And I was like, I figured it was next week, next whatever. So I show up all scrubby and like gross. And I was going to ask if they could just watch Abby for a couple hours because I wanted to run some errands with Jason. And I walk in the house and it's all decorated for a party. And there's trays of crédutes and everyone and Emily and Sheila and as well as the other moms are there. And Ruth comes out like all dolled up and she's like, why?
It's like, oh no.
Fuck. So she'd even like laid out a whole bunch of crafting things and bought a bunch of dollar store witch hats so we could decorate our own witch hats while we drank margaritas before going to the graveyard. And it was so well planned. And I was there in my scrubby clothes like, let me just be right back. Actually, I decorated my hat and then I went home and got changed with the speed of speed.
See, there you go. It all worked out.
Goth makeup on me. If you want to go really basic goth makeup, you just grab wadges of eyeshadow and go, and you're good. And that's basically what I did.
That is the aesthetic.
The photos turned out really cute.
That's awesome. All right. So I have, mine is not really a story. Mine is a, here's what I'm working on saga that will be of interest to probably no one but me. But okay, so.
I'm interested.
Actually, there is a segue because this is a witchy sort of pattern. It's called Magic in Moonlight, I think. But the blurb was all about like, these gloves will give you witchy powers. Ha ha ha, this is great. And I was like, cool, awesome. So here's the problem. Here they are. You can see the little stars.
Yeah.
You can see the moons and stars on the back.
Yeah.
Well, so color work is like very limited in terms of how many stitches you have to make the pattern, right?
Okay.
So this one with these needles is too big for my tiny, tiny, narrow little hands. And I actually made a modification to the cuff to make it fit my wrist, but then the hands are still like just ginormous.
Damn it.
So I need to start over with the next size down of needles.
Fair enough.
That is these. And I hate them.
So you're going to use sewing needles to knit?
They are size 1, which is like, I think 2 millimeters. This is I use this size all the time for socks. But I hate these needles because they're very long and they're metal, so they're very slippery. So things are just flailing about all the time and I fucking hate it. So I was like,
stitches and...
yeah. So I was like, I have some shorter wooden size ones. Where are they? Well, they're in my knitting project at the office.
Oh.
Yes.
And when will you be back there?
2022, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I'm...
Yeah.
Well, so you need shorter knitting needles is what I'm hearing.
No, so I need... Well, shorter would be ideal, but what I needed was not metal. And I was like, you know what? I have...
Chopsticks?
No. God, no.
Okay.
Chopsticks are gigantic. I'm not making knitting needles. Don't be ridiculous. But I have these. This is a set of wooden size 1 knitting needles, double-pointed knitting needles. This is a sock that I started knitting for Dad in 2010.
So can you just transfer those onto the metal?
Yes. So that is where we will be starting tonight, and then I will start this fucking thing for the 3rd time. Because this is 2 gloves. You can't see the first one because I ripped it out, but this is 2.
Pam.
And
I,
then,
yeah.
hopefully it will fit, because if it doesn't, I'm screwed.
Well, if it's just barely too big, I'm witchy.
But I need gloves. My hands are
Okay,
cold.
that's a good point.
Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't knit you gloves. I'm just saying right now the reason I'm even knitting gloves is because winter's coming in. My hands get cold and I don't have any.
Okay, good luck. Are they going to be full fingers and everything?
No, fingerless.
Fingerless gloves?
I have mittens for if it's really cold, but this is for like when it's chilly.
Nice. Yeah. Good old-fashioned wrister things.
Yeah.
So I've got a segue for you because fingers.
This
The
could go
recipe-
in any number of directions. Go on.
The recipe I used this evening called for pan frying your chicken and then sticking it in an oven to finish cooking. And I was like, I haven't tried this recipe before. I'm not going to pretend I know everything about cooking. I'll do that. Like, it's not my favorite method, but maybe it'll work.
Mhm.
And the pan was a frying pan that's oven safe, so I just threw the whole thing in. And then when I pulled it out, I was like, make sure nobody touches this. If Jason comes in and thinks this is a nice, cool frying pan, like, this is dangerous. Make sure the hot pad is handy. Like, don't let anyone touch this. And less than 2 minutes later, I went to move it with my bare hand.
Of course you did.
And so I've got that burn. That's pretty obvious.
Ouch.
There we go. And
Yeah.
I've got that one too.
Oof, honey.
Apparently I grip things kind of oddly. So my middle finger's fine, but I grab it like this, I guess, and yeah, it was pretty fucking pathetic because it was
I'm sorry.
It was Chekhov's frying pan handle.
It's always the way though, like you think to yourself like, this is hot, don't touch it, and monkey brain goes, that looks fine.
And especially if you're focused on, like, no one will be able to tell this is hot. Warn the people, save the family, protect them. Just connections weren't made. That should have been.
Man, unrelatedly, these socks also kind of break my heart. You see how when I hold it straight up, the lines kind of twist?
They do, they look braided. Oh, they twist like...
Yeah, like this line right here.
It drifts, yeah.
Yeah. That's called biasing, and what it means is that this yarn wants to, like, here, like if I bring it together, it wants to twist itself up. It's over twisted. Yeah. So, that's not good. That's bad. That's the over twist in the yarn coming out in the material, and it'll just make it keep twisting like that. It's like what happens with a cheap t-shirt. You know where the seams twist?
And it will... Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hate that. So it'll never relax and just be the shape you want it to be?
No. No, the properties of the fabric mean that it will not hang straight. So really, there's no reason for me to even save this sock, except that I don't feel like emotionally coping with ripping it out right now because it's been on the needles for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's heavy. I've got binders full of half-finished drawings that I'm not having anything to do with letting go of, even if I don't have any intention of ever finishing them.
Yep, exactly. Man, I hope these are the same size needles.
Too bad you don't have calipers.
I actually have, they make needle gauges, which is a little thing that has holes drilled out in the size of each size of needle.
That makes sense.
And I have one, but it's across the room and I don't want to get it. So we're just going to go with a sort of nebulous hope.
Fair enough. Someone quoted Granny Weatherwax on a thread I was reading, and it made me decide that I needed to pick up Jugulum and reread that conversation she has with Oates.
Mm-hmm.
When they're on their way to the castle.
Yeah, sin is thinking of people as things.
Yes. And how many
Mhm.
needles how many angels can dance on the head of a pin?
Yes.
Like, what size pin? It's not. I don't know. Well, 16 then, if it's a regular sewing pin. Really? You counted? No, but it's as good an answer you'll get as any.
All right. So what I'm going to do also, because I'm talking way too much about this project, I'm not going to rip this out. I'm just going to cut it off. And that way, if this going down a size doesn't work and I want to go back to this one somehow for some reason,
Yeah. You can just
I don't
tie
have
it
to.
on new thingies.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to reknit it again for the 4th time because I assure you I will not.
Yeah.
And you may quote me on that.
I was having issues with molybdenum the other day because that horse head turned out stellar. Like there's things that I don't even remember painting, like the little veins on the nose and everything. And
Mhm.
it's about 1/8 of an inch in the wrong spot.
Oof.
Just a tiny bit where I don't want it to be. And rather than adjust that yet, I was going to try and adjust the figure because it's not finished.
Yeah, I would do
And I was
that
gonna
for sure.
Yeah, and I was gonna make the figure bulkier and more like your classic strong man
Mhm.
build. Um, like if he had been a whole horse, he would have been a Clydesdale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would explain the bell bottoms and the really big hoofs too.
Indeed.
But
Boy,
yeah.
this project's going to be hard to see.
And the other thing that I very much want to work on, that's been haunting my dreams, is some character designs that Drea hired me to do, and I don't actually remember all of the description. I only remember what I wrote down, and I didn't write down enough.
Sounds like a good reason to give Dre a call.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just embarrassing because I have to be like, okay, so all of those things you told me over the 2 hours of tea and chit-chatting and paying me to do art, what were all those things again? Say it again. You know, I'm going to be 40 in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I haven't emotionally coped with this fact. You seem like you have.
You'll have to respect me.
Yeah, nice try. Dad's 68. I don't respect him.
68? Dad's like 72.
Why did I say 68? I know how old Dad is.
Mom's 68?
That might be what I was thinking, but I don't typically confuse our parents with each other.
It's
I
not
mean, I
easy to
confuse
do.
them, but you know.
I knew what you meant.
I'm so confused right now. I don't know.
It's okay. All is well.
Paul is not well. I don't want to start this for a 3rd time. I wanted to have worked the first time. I'd be very pouty about it.
I understand. I do. Sympathy.
I actually want to work on my sweater, but I need to wash it before I can knit the sleeves, and I can't wash it until we clean the bathtub, and we don't have any bathtub cleaner.
Do you have any Epsom salts?
We have baking soda. I tried that. It was not sufficient. It's
not abrasive enough. Epsom salts are abrasive enough. You have to use a little more elbow grease than with Comet, but it works.
I don't know if we have any. I'll have to look.
Let's see. Do. Kazadai menu! Right?
Yes. What does that mean, I wonder?
Well, Kazad is Moria, Khazad-dûm, the halls of Moria. So Kazad is probably like it's a bit like screaming USA! USA!
I meant more the menu part because I always want to pronounce it menu, and I'm like, I don't think he's screaming about his menus.
No, I don't know. I can find out. Do. Kazad menu. Meaning the dwarves are upon you.
Ah, so Khazad-dûm means the halls of the dwarves.
Yeah. And it's the only example we have of a complete sentence in Khuzdul.
All I can think is that it is the dwarvish equivalent of yelling, yeet!
Yes, and Baruch Khazad is axes of the dwarfs.
Nice.
I think of it as, we're coming, bitch! But again, if you're screaming, Khazad, Khazad, what you're screaming is, humans, humans! That's a bit.
Look, battle cries sound really dumb when you...
It would scare the shit out of me if I was the opposing army.
Fair enough. I was going to say, battle cries sound really dumb outside of their proper context, like many very context-specific things that one might say.
It's true, except for, as we discussed, Eulalia, which just sounds fucking awesome no matter who you are.
Indeed.
Gamling the Old looked down from the Hornburg, hearing the great voice of the dwarf above all the tumult. The orcs are in the deep, he cried. Helm! Helm! Forth, Helmingas! He shouted as he leaped down the stair from the rock with many men of Westfold at his back. Their onset was fierce and sudden, and the orcs gave way before them. Okay, so Gamling gets points for being an absolute badass. It's like, oh, I'm too old for this shit. Ere long they were hemmed in the narrows of the gorge, and all were slain or driven, shrieking, into the chasm of the deep to fall before the guardians of the hidden caves. 21, cried Gimli. He hewed a two-handed stroke and laid the last orc before his feet. Now my count passes Master Legolas again. We must stop this rat-hole, said Gamling. Dwarves are said to be cunning folk with stone. Lend us your aid, master. We do not shape stone with battle axes, nor with our fingernails, said Gimli, but I will help as I may. They gathered such small boulders and broken stones as they could find to hand, and under Gimli's direction the Westfold men blocked up the inner end of the culvert until only a narrow outlet remained. Then the deeping stream, swollen by the rain, churned and fretted in its choked path and spread slowly in cold pools from cliff to cliff. It will be drier above, said Gimli. Come, Gamling, let us see how things go on the wall. He climbed up and found Legolas beside Aragorn and Éomer. The elf was whetting his long knife. There was, for a while, a lull in the assault, since the attempt to break in through the culvert had been foiled. 21, said Gimli. Good, said Legolas. But my count is now 24. It has been knife work up here.
I love that this is like legit not something that Peter Jackson made up for the movie. Like this is...
Yeah, because you'd think it would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I totally thought that was pure cinema, and it's like, nope, nope, absolute canon. Mm. Eomer and Aragorn leaned wearily on their swords. Away on the left, the crash and clamor of the battle on the rock rose loud again, but the Hornburg still held fast, like an island in the sea. Its gates lay in ruin, but over the barricade of beams and stones within no enemy as yet had passed. Aragorn looked at the pale stars and at the moon now sloping behind the western hills that enclosed the valley. "This is a night as long as years," he said.
That's a mood.
"Right. How long will the day tarry?" "Dawn is not far off," said Gamling, who had now climbed up beside him. "But dawn will not help us, I fear." "Yet dawn is ever the hope of men," said Aragorn. "But these creatures of Isengard, these half-orcs and goblin men that the foul craft of Saruman has bred, they will not quail at the sun," said Gamling. "And neither will the wild men of the hills. Do you not hear their voices?" "I hear them," said Eomer, "but they are only the scream of birds and the bellowing of beasts to my ears."
Okay,
Yet
racist.
Right. "Yet there are many that cry in the Dunland tongue," said Gamling. "I know that tongue. It is an ancient speech of men, and once was spoken in many western valleys of the Mark. Hark, they hate us, and they are glad, for our doom seems certain to them. 'The king, they cry. We will take their king. Death to the Forgoil, death to the Strawheads, death to the robbers of the north.'" See, they're hurling some racist slurs too. Come on.
Okay, sure, but they're hurling racist slurs at the people who came and took their land. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I know. I hate being on the side of essentially colonists. It breaks my heart.
I mean, that's the thing about reading a book that was written by a British dude in the 40s or whenever, is that that part of history had not been examined by the British very much.
Right?
It was still happening.
Yeah. It was current events.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, it's a bit like reading Stranger in a Strange Land during the era, the zeitgeist of the spectrum of gender and sexuality, because the premise of that book is that the thing that will save humanity is the bipolarity of human sexuality. And it's like, I think if he were alive right now, he would have written a different book that spoke to today's zeitgeist. Because back in the 60s, it was incredibly progressive of him to even admit that femininity had any place in a well-balanced society. Like, I think Tolkien's the same way, that I feel like he'd be one of the woke ones, at least one of the educated ones, pre-woke, if you will.
I don't know. Don't know that much about his political thoughts.
And we can't know what his political thoughts would have been if he were himself now.
Indeed.
Yep. Such names they have for us. Not in 1,000 years have they forgotten their grievance that the lords of Gondor gave the mark to Eorl the Young and made alliance with him. That old hatred Saruman has inflamed. They are fierce folk when roused. They will not give way now for dusk or dawn until Theoden is taken or they themselves are slain. Nonetheless, day will bring hope to me, said Aragorn. Is it not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg if men defended it? So the minstrels say, said Eomer. Then let us defend it and hope, said Aragorn. A friend of mine lost his cat the other day. The cat's name is Hope, and so Hope died on Tuesday, and that was just the saddest thing I'd ever heard.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
If it's any consolation, the person who spread COVID at the White House was also named Hope, so Hope is catching.
It's too much irony.
I know, right?
Yeah. If only Trump had hired someone named Karma. That would be awesome. Have you noticed how much of his staff is blank-eyed but like traditionally attractive young women? That freaks
Yes.
me out. Variations on the theme of Ivanka, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And then there's that, but like left in the microwave too long, and you get Kellyanne Conway. Even as they spoke, there came a blare of trumpets. Then there was a crash and a flash of flame and smoke. The waters of the deeping stream poured out, hissing and foaming. They were choked no longer. A gaping hole was blasted in the wall. A host of dark shapes poured in. It's interesting that the gunpowder is also original to the story.
Yeah, I always forget that actually does happen in the book.
Right? But it makes perfect sense. Gandalf does fireworks. They know about gunpowder.
Mm-hmm. Just no one had ever used it in war before.
Ah. Devilry of Saruman, cried Aragorn. They have crept in the culvert again while we talked, and they have lit the fire of Orthanc beneath our feet. Elendil! Elendil! He shouted as he leaped down into the breach. But even as he did so, 100 ladders were raised against the battlements. Over the wall and under the wall, the last assault came sweeping like a dark wave upon a hill of sand. The defense was swept away. Some of the riders were driven back further and further into the deep, falling and fighting as they gave way, step by step, towards the caves. Others cut their way back towards the citadel. A broad stairway climbed from the deep up to the rock in the rear gate of the Hornburg. Near the bottom stood Aragorn. In his hand still Anduril gleamed, and the terror of this sword for a while held back the enemy, as one by one all who could gain the stair passed up towards the gate. Behind, on the upper steps, knelt Legolas. His bow was bent, but one gleamed arrow was all that he had left, and he peered out now, ready to shoot the first orc that should dare to approach the stair. All who can have now got safe within, Aragorn, he called. Come back! Aragorn turned and sped up the stair, but as he ran, he stumbled in his weariness. At once his enemies leaped forward. Up came the orcs, yelling with their long arms stretching out to seize him. The foremost fell with Legolas's last arrow in his throat, but the rest sprang over him. Then a great boulder cast from the outer wall above crashed down upon the stair and hurled them back into the deep. Aragorn gained the door, and swiftly it clanged to behind him. Things go ill, my friends, he said, wiping the sweat from his brow with his arm.
Ill enough. You're alive, so.
Right? like, we are so fucked.
5 minutes ago, there will be hope.
That could have been the one F-bomb, looking out over the sea of orcs from Helm's Deep and go, you've seen the meme?
Yeah.
Yeah, as PG-13. They could have had one F-bomb apiece. It should have been, fuck.
Yeah, that definitely should have been the one for the Two Towers.
Ill enough, said Legolas, but not yet hopeless while we have you with us. Where is Gimli? I do not know, said Aragorn. I last saw him fighting on the ground behind the wall, but the enemy swept us apart. Alas, that is evil news, said Legolas. He is stout and strong, hey? He is stout and strong, said Aragorn, Let us hope that he will escape back to the caves. There he would be safe for a while. Safer than we. Such a refuge would be to the liking of a dwarf. That must be my hope, said Legolas. But I wish that he had come this way. I desired to tell Master Gimli that my tale is now 39. If he wins back to the caves, he will pass your count again, laughed Aragorn. Never did I see an axe so wielded. I must go and seek some arrows, said Legolas. Would that this night would end, and I could have better light for shooting. Your elf eyes aren't helping you there.
Right? Like, in D&D, elves have dark vision.
Right?
Just saying.
I like it that he runs out of ammo.
Yeah, I like that bit too.
And
it would have been...
What? And that he's not above, like, grabbing a bunch of orc arrows off a battlefield before they move on to the next thing.
Yep. I also think that it would have been a really cool scene if they could have worked in the fact that he only had the one arrow, and then Aragorn stumbles and he shoots, like, the guy about to grab him with his last arrow. That's pretty damn cool.
Yes. Would have been less dramatic, but more fulfilling than skateboarding on a shield.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are mildly cinematically upsetting, did you hear that Amazon's making a Lord of the Rings series?
No.
Then you also didn't hear that, and this is just something I saw on Twitter, so God knows, but apparently they announced that it will be more of an edgy version with nudity and possibly sex scenes.
Well, it's about time there was sex in Middle-earth.
Yeah, but, like, nobody wanted that. That's what we have fan fiction for.
Yeah, we don't need to see it. You don't need to turn Middle-earth into Westeros. Anyone listening, Westeros already exists.
That's what basically everyone was saying, was like, no one wants Lord of the Rings to be Game of Thrones. Get your minds right.
Yeah. Yeah, if it were even if it were done well, nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Then again, nobody asked for chocolate-covered bacon, and yet...
Look, I don't think those ideas are remotely comparable, because chocolate-covered bacon's pretty good.
But it is also about as sinful as sex in Middle-earth.
I just don't want it.
Sinful is the wrong word. Wrong. It's as wrong. Aragorn now passed into the citadel. There, to his dismay, he learned that Éomer had not reached the Hornburg. Nay, he did not come to the rock, said one of the Westfold men. I last saw him gathering men about him and fighting in the mouth of the deep. Gambling was with him, and the dwarf, but I could not come to them. Aragorn strode on through the inner court and mounted to a high chamber in the tower. There stood the king, dark against a narrow window, looking out upon the vale. What is the news, Aragorn? He said. The Deeping Wall is taken, Lord, and all the defence swept away. But many have escaped hither to the rock. Is Éomer here? No, Lord. But many of your men retreated into the deep, and some say that Éomer was amongst them. In the narrows they may hold back the enemy and come within the caves. What hope they may have then, I do not know. More than we. Good provision, it is said, and the air is wholesome there because of outlets through fissures in the rock far above. None can force an entrance against determined men. They may hold out long. But the orcs have brought a devilry from Orthanc, said Aragorn. They have a blasting fire, and with it they took the wall. If they cannot come in the caves, they may seal up those that are inside. But now we must turn all our thought to our own defense. I fret in this prison, said Theoden. If I could set a spear in rest riding before my men upon the field, maybe I could have felt again the joy of battle, and so ended. But I serve little purpose here. Here at least you are guarded in the strongest fastness of the mark, said Aragorn. More hope we have to defend you in the Hornburg than in Edoras, or even at Dunharrow in the mountains. I love how they're all like, we want you to be safe. And he's like, I just want to die in battle.
I feel like that's
I earned it. Shit.
I feel like that's pretty relatable, being like, I feel really useless here, and people are like, but you're safe. Did I say that I felt unsafe? No,
Right.
I said I felt bored.
And I'm not, like, thanks for giving me a thing I didn't ask for.
Exactly.
It is said that the Hornburg has never fallen to assault, said Theoden. But now my heart is doubtful. The world changes, and all that once was strong now proves unsure. How shall any tower withstand such numbers and such reckless hate? Had I known that the strength of Isengard was grown so great, maybe I should not so rashly have ridden forth to meet it, for all the arts of Gandalf. His counsel seems not now so good as it did under the morning sun. Do not judge the counsel of Gandalf until all is over, Lord, said Aragorn. The end will not be long, said the king. But I will not end here, taken like an old badger in a trap. Snowmane and Hasufel and the horses of my guard are in the inner court. When dawn comes, I will bid men sound Helm's horn, and I will ride forth. Will you ride with me then, son of Arathorn? Maybe we shall cleave a road, or make such an end as will be worth a song, if any be left to sing of us hereafter. I will. Right? I will ride with you, said Aragorn. Taking his leave, he returned to the walls and passed round all their circuit, and heartening the men and lending aid wherever the assault was hot. Legolas went with him. Blasts of fire leaped up from below, shaking the stones. Grappling hooks were hurled and ladders raised. Again and again the orcs gained the summit of the outer wall, and again the defenders cast them down. At last Aragorn stood above the great gates, heedless of the darts of the enemy. As he looked forth, he saw the eastern sky grow pale. Then he raised his empty hand, palm outward in token of parley. The orcs yelled and jeered. Come down, they cried. If you wish to speak to us, come down. Bring out your king. We are the fighting Uruk-hai. We will fetch him from his hole if he does not come. Bring out your skulking king. They said that. All 10,000 of them at once.
It's like, ants. Just they're more of a hive mind.
Hive mind, yeah. That actually bears out. The king stays or comes at his own will, said Aragorn. And what are you doing here? They answered. Why do you look out? Do you wish to see the greatness of our army? We are the fighting Uruk-hai. I looked out to see the dawn, said Aragorn. What of the dawn? They jeered. We are the Uruk-hai. We do not stop to fight for night or day, for fair weather or for storm. We come to kill by sun or moon. What of the dawn? None knows what the new day shall bring him, said Aragorn. Get you gone, ere it turn to your evil. Get down, or we will shoot you from the wall, they cried. This is no parley. You have nothing to say. I have still this to say, answered Aragorn. No enemy has yet taken the Hornburg. Depart, or not one of you will be spared. Not one will be left alive to take back tidings to the north. You do not know your peril. So great a power and royalty was revealed in Aragorn as he stood there alone above the ruined gates before the host of his enemies, that many of the wild men paused and looked back over their shoulders to the valley, and some looked up doubtfully at the sky. But the orcs laughed with loud voices, and a hail of darts and arrows whistled over the wall as Aragorn leaped down. There was a roar and a blast of fire. The archway of the gate above which he had stood a moment before crumbled and crashed in smoke and dust. The barricade was scattered as if by a thunderbolt. Aragorn ran to the king's tower. But even as the gate fell and the orcs about it yelled, preparing to charge, a murmur arose behind them like a wind in the distance, and it grew to a clamor of many voices crying strange news in the dawn. The orcs upon the rock, hearing the rumor of dismay, wavered and looked back. And then, sudden and terrible, from the tower above, the sound of the great horn of Helm rang out. All that heard that sound trembled. Many of the orcs cast themselves on their faces and covered their ears with their claws. Back from the deep the echoes came, blast upon blast, as if on every cliff and hill a mighty herald stood. I would really have loved to have heard it echo like that.
That would have been cool.
Right? But on the walls men looked up, listening with wonder, for the echoes did not die. Ever the horn blasts wound on among the hills. Nearer now and louder they answered one to another, blowing fierce and free. "Helm! Helm!" the riders shouted. "Helm is arisen and comes back to war! Helm for Theoden King!" It's kind of some foreshadowing. Yeah, fuck you, we've got ghosts.
Yeah, right?
Blood-sucking ghosts.
I mean, like you do.
Yeah. And with that shout the king came. His horse was white as snow, golden was his shield, and his spear was long. At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Eorl the Young. Light sprang in the sky. Night departed. "Forth, Eorlingas!" With a cry and a great noise they charged. Down from the gates they roared. Over the causeway they swept, and they drove through the hosts of Isengard as a wind among grass. Behind them from the deep came the stern cries of men issuing from the caves, driving forth the enemy. Out poured all the men that were left upon the rock, and ever the sound of blowing horns echoed in the hills. On they rode, the king and his companions. Captains and champions fell or fled before them. Neither orc nor man withstood them. Their backs were to the swords and spears of the riders, and their faces to the valley. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day. So King Theoden rode from Helm's Gate and clove his path to the great dike. There the company halted. Light grew bright about them. Shafts of the sun flared above the eastern hills and glimmered on their spears. But they sat silent on their horses, and they gazed down upon the deeping coombe. The land had changed. Where before the green dale had lain, its grassy slopes lapping the ever-mounting hills, there now a forest loomed. Great trees, bare and silent, stood rank on rank with tangled bough and hoary head. Their twisted roots were buried in the long green grass. Darkness was under them. Between the dike and the eaves of that nameless wood, only 2 open furlongs lay. There now cowered the proud hosts of Saruman, in terror of the king and in terror of the trees. They streamed down from Helm's Gate until all above the dike was empty of them, but below it they were packed like swarming flies. Vainly they crawled and clambered about the walls of the coombe, seeking to escape. Upon the east, too sheer and stony was the valley's side, and upon the left, from the west, Their final doom approached. There, suddenly, upon a ridge, appeared a rider clad in white, shining in the rising sun. Over the low hills the horns were sounding. Behind him, hastening down the long slopes, were 1,000 men on foot. Their swords were in their hands. Amid them strode a man tall and strong. His shield was red. As he came to the valley's brink, he set to his lips a great black horn and blew a ringing blast. "Erkenbrand!" the riders shouted. "Erkenbrand!" "Behold the White Rider!" cried Aragorn. "Gandalf is come again." "Mithrandir! Mithrandir!" said Legolas. "This is wizardry indeed. Come, I would look on this forest ere the spell changes." Not the hot issue, Leggy.
He's a little bit of a himbo.
The hosts of Isengard roared, swaying this way and that, turning from fear to fear. Again the horn sounded from the tower. Down through the breach of the dike charged the king's company. Down from the hills leaped Erkenbrand, lord of Westfold. Down leaped Shadowfax like a deer that runs sure-footed in the mountains. The White Rider was upon them, and the terror of his coming filled the enemy with madness. The wild men fell on their faces before him. The orcs reeled and screamed and cast aside both sword and spear. Like a black smoke driven by a mounting wind, they fled. Wailing they passed under the waiting shadow of the trees, and from that shadow none ever came again.
That scene is my favorite bit of the Battle of Helm's Deep that didn't make it to the movie because it's so fucking creepy. Like, so creepy. The forest ate them.
The forest ate them. I always get Poe in my head during that last sentence, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted.
Exactly. Man, what were we looking at? Oh, we were looking at the Tumblr tag for goth, I think, and someone had chosen, it was like Poe quotes for gothy October, blah blah blah. And they didn't choose a single quote from the Raven. It was all just like super random, unpoetic shit from his short stories. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get your life together. Like, what's happening?
Yeah. No. You ridiculous human. Oh, goodness. Dia had a saying. She always said that the difference between baby bats and true goths was that baby bats wear big, clunky black boots because they look hip. And goths wear them because it makes it easier to kick ourselves out of our coffins in the evening.
Sandy is so deeply offended because her 7th graders don't know the difference between goth and emo.
No.
Yeah. But they don't know what grunge is either. Did I tell you about that?
Yes, you did. It made me want to cry. The Kurt Cobain is basically it. Kurt Cobain and flannel shirts, and it's like,
oh, they don't even know flannel shirts.
Oh. Just Kurt. That's all.
Kurt Cobain and Taylor Swift. That's grunge to the new generation. I know.
No.
They also tag a lot of things grunge, but also cottagecore, and I'm like, those are very different things.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. It makes sense that for the movies they pulled the Erkenbrand angle and instead used Éomer as the 11th hour Yggdrasil.
Oh, yeah. That was very satisfying.
Yeah.
Like, cinematically, it worked really well.
It did.
In case you're wondering how small my needles are, this is what I got done in an hour.
It might take a while. It was only like 40 minutes.
Okay, that's true. This is what I got done in 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's still...
And That's why I'm really upset that this is the third time I've started this project, because it takes for fucking ever. Oh well.
Yep.
I'm gonna go.
Oh well is all I got.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go eat a food because I haven't done that yet.
Okay, go eat a food. I love you so much.
I love you too. I'll see you on Monday.
Okay. Yes. Cuidado.
Yes. Llamas.